This is book 23 of the Animorphs series, and it is much better than its cover looks. So this is a book that heavily focuses on internal conflict instead of external conflict, which is a little bit flipped of the average Animorph book, which is high action. So it's definitely a book that focuses on Tobias's inner issues, and Tobias's inner issues is he a hawk or a boy? Because he is a person who has kind of gotten stuck as a hawk most of the time, and he can choose to turn back into a human, but only for 2 hours at a time. And more than that, he'll get stuck as a human and then not be able to turn into animals anymore and not be able to fight the alien menace anymore. So Tobias's inner conflict seesaw is, on one hand, he can be a hawk. And being a hawk means flying. Being a hawk means he gets to hang out with the other Animorphs. Being a hawk means he gets to fight the Yeerks, the evil alien invaders. Or he could choose to permanently become human, which means he could have an easier life, not have to hunt for his food, not have to worry about his lifespan or other predators encroaching on his territory. He could just let that all go. He also fantasizes that once he's a human, he can have a great home life, but he knows in his heart that isn't true, because even before he got messed up in this whole alien war and turning into a hawk, he really didn't have anyone looking out for him or caring for him in a parental sort of way, or even much in a friend sort of way. So he knows that it's a sham, and therefore he lands on the hawk side of the seesaw, but he still feels so torn, because he is too much of a boy to be a good hawk, and he's too much of a hawk to be a good boy, and he doesn't know where he fits in. Tobias considers his shortcomings to all be signs of being too human. The big plot of this book is Tobias is going hungry because he doesn't have the heart to kill all these little animals all the time for his food. So he resorts instead to eating fresh roadkill, because then he doesn't have to kill it. And on one hand, he sees this roadkill as a weakness, because it means he isn't a good hunter, he isn't a good hawk. What a disaster. But he also sees his turmoil over eating roadkill as being too human, because a real hawk does eat roadkill, and it doesn't care if it's roadkill or something it killed itself. Like, it's meat, it'll eat meat. So Tobias sees both him resorting to roadkill and him caring that he resorted to roadkill as human weaknesses, and he sees all of these weaknesses as being human. There's a point in the book where Tobias is participating in the external conflict where they're trying to rescue a baby alien. And Tobias is trying to carry this alien out of the evil clutches. Tobias gets shot and covered in terrible acid. Understandably, Tobias drops the baby alien and then it gets whisked off by the evil monsters. And Tobias beats himself up for this, not because he failed, but because he failed because he was too human, because he cared about pain. And hawks wouldn't do that. Hawks wouldn't, drop something they were carrying if they were shot and covered in acid, right? So we can see that, Tobias is not being rational about this. Every shortcoming he sees in himself, he just blames on being too human, because he sees the hawk as strength. However, he also sees all of his problems as originating from being a hawk. He sees his loneliness as tied up with his hawkness. He sees the lack of a home tied up with his hawkness, even though, now that he's a hawk, it's the least lonely and most home life he's really ever had. But he still sees all of these problems with both sides of him, and it tears him apart. So, the external plot and the internal plot finally come to a head when Tobias gets to read a letter from his long-lost father, who turns out to be an alien warrior prince. Side plot. And in this letter, Elfangor apologizes to Tobias, saying, "I'm so sorry, I wasn't ever there for you as a father. I had to go to my duty fighting this alien space war." And you would think that this would comfort Tobias, because it's realizing that someone cares for him, or that it's realizing that he has a family, but that's really not what he takes away from it. Tobias's big lesson that he takes away from it is this. And now, I guess I could be angry at him, but that wasn't how I felt. Elfangor had run away from his duty when he came to Earth. He'd had no choice but to return to that duty, no choice at all, if he was to play the part he had to play, and be the prince he was. I'd lost a father. Because of that fact, Elfangor had been where he had to be, when he had to be, to change the lives of 5 ordinary kids forever, and maybe save the human race. I wondered why the Illimist had allowed my father to leave that letter, but I didn't wonder for long. The answer was too simple. See, I had a duty too. And who was there to remind you that what you want for yourself is less important than doing what is necessary and right? Message received, Father. Message received. So the lesson that Tobias takes away from this is that he's been thinking too much about this balancing act of where do I fit in? Do I fit in on the human side, on the hawk side? Which side should I come down on? And what he realizes is it isn't about that. It's about asking the question, where am I needed? Where am I valuable? And of course, the lesson Tobias has learned is he's needed here in the Animorphs to fight this awesome battle against the Yeerks, and there is value in him being himself. That even though he doesn't fit into the drawn categories of person versus hawk, there is such value in what he can contribute to this conflict, to this world. And it's beautiful that the ending of this book is so nuanced. It's not, I love my life now, I'm totally fine with being a hawk boy. It's, I found a reason why my life is worth living and my contribution to the world is valuable, which is a deeper kind of satisfaction and contentment than just loving every part of your life. It's loving your life because it is your life. And we see this in the end of the book. Tobias could have gone to Axe and said, hey, Axe buddy, remember your brother Elfangor? I'm his son. It turns out we're family. And they could have had a beautiful family reunion, and I'm sure they got that moment. However, the end of the book doesn't end on that note. It ends with Tobias going to Rachel, because Rachel is the person who has accepted him all this time for who he is. It's the lesson of you don't have to change who you are fundamentally in order to make human connections. That you don't have to fit into these established status quo categories in order to be a good person. So here's how the book ends. That night, I went to Rachel's room. She was asleep. She was ticked off when I woke her up, but she rolled out of bed and put on a robe and told me she'd never get any sleep with some idiot bird coming in and out at all hours. Then she showed me the cake. She lit a candle and I blew it out by flapping my wing. Neither of us sang happy birthday, but she said it. Happy birthday, Tobias.